It all started with a simple vibration in her pocket. Olivia checked her phone expecting a message from her coworker, maybe a dinner reminder from her mom, but instead it was a short, cold message from her boyfriend of 3 years. "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. I need space. Please don't call me." No explanation, no warning. Just that. And just like that, everything began to unravel. Not just her relationship, but her legal world too. Olivia wasn't just hurt. She was enraged. She had left her apartment to move into his, given up a job to support his career move to another city, and co-signed on a lease that still had 9 months left. He had promised they were getting engaged, even talked about venues. She had even paid deposits. She had text messages to prove it. But now he was gone, and legally she was stuck holding the bag. What Olivia didn't know is that in several US states, breaking up over text can actually lead to civil legal action. Not because of the breakup itself, but because of everything tangled around it. In the eyes of the law, emotional cruelty isn't always actionable, but financial deception, verbal contracts and broken engagements definitely can be. This story didn't end at the text. In fact, that message became the starting point of a much larger legal nightmare. In the state of North Carolina, for example, there's an old but still enforceable claim called breach of promise to marry. If someone makes a clear promise to marry, and the other person makes major life changes based on that promise, then walks away, they can be sued. Yes, in 2025, a person can still sue their ex for backing out of an engagement. North Carolina, South Carolina, and a handful of other states recognize these types of claims. Olivia had given up her job, moved across state lines, paid thousands toward a wedding venue, and had text messages to prove he asked her to start planning. Now, those texts would become evidence, not of a breakup, but of a promise made and broken. It's not just about rings or dresses either. In some states like Kansas and Georgia, engagement rings are considered conditional gifts. That means whoever breaks the engagement, if it's not mutual, may be legally required to return the ring or compensate the other party. Olivia didn't even get a ring, but what she got was worse. Bills, contracts, deposits, all in her name. So she did something she never thought she'd do. She took that text to a lawyer. Her attorney, Marla Jennings, had seen this before. In fact, she specialized in these kinds of modern relationship breakdowns. She called it techno-ghosting litigation. More and more, people were breaking off serious relationships through abrupt digital messages, texts, DMs, even Venmo comments. And more, the fallout wasn't just emotional. It was legal. The issue wasn't the breakup, it was what was left behind. And Olivia, with her job loss, shared lease, and written evidence of wedding promises, had a case. Marla began gathering everything. Screenshots of promises, emails confirming venue bookings, receipts, lease agreements, social media posts where the boyfriend, Nathan, had publicly called Olivia his future wife. It all became part of a legal argument called detrimental reliance. That's when someone makes a decision or suffers a loss based on someone else's promise. A concept courts recognize all across the US. Meanwhile, Nathan had no idea any of this was happening. He had moved out, blocked her number, and gone back to dating. He thought that text message was the end, but in reality, it was only the beginning. Weeks later, he was served with papers, not just a civil complaint, but a lawsuit outlining damages of over $18,000. Olivia wasn't suing him for breaking her heart. She was suing him for breaking his word. Chapter 2. When words become evidence. When Nathan first read the lawsuit, his jaw dropped. He thought it was a prank, maybe a dramatic bluff. But the documents were real, stamped by the state court, and his name was printed on every page. What made it worse? The evidence was mostly his own messages, his own words. His own texts, screenshots Olivia had saved, were now neatly indexed by her lawyer as Exhibits A through F. That's when it hit him. What he typed in a moment of casual comfort had become the foundation of a legal claim that could cost him thousands. Suddenly, every "I promise," every "we'll get married soon," every "you can quit your job, I'll take care of us" became a smoking gun in a civil courtroom. Digital communication has changed everything about how relationships and breakups play out in the legal world. In the past, it was your word against theirs. Now, it's your text thread against the truth. In the United States, text messages are fully admissible as evidence in civil court, as long as they can be authenticated. Authentication can be as simple as verifying the sender's phone number or confirming timestamps and content. Olivia had everything: names, dates, conversations, and even Nathan's contact saved in her phone under future husband. All those sweet nothings. They were now formal documentation of promises made and broken. What made Olivia's case especially strong was the tone and consistency of Nathan's messages. He wasn't vague. He made clear, written promises. Start looking at wedding dresses. I'll cover your part of the rent when you leave your job. Book the venue. We'll figure out the money later. These weren't random romantic gestures. Legally, they amounted to oral contracts memorialized in writing. According to California's civil code and similar statutes in many other states, a written promise, even over text, can be enforceable if the other person relies on it and suffers harm because of it. That's exactly what Marla was arguing in court. But what about states where breach of promise to marry laws are no longer recognized? In many places, the old laws have been repealed or faded into obscurity. But even in those states, Olivia's legal team had another angle: cohabitation liability and unjust enrichment. If a couple lives together, makes joint financial decisions, and one party benefits at the expense of the other, the court can step in to correct the imbalance. It's not about romance. It's about fairness. For example, in Massachusetts and Colorado, judges have ruled in favor of ex-partners who could prove they paid rent, covered bills, or took on debt based on verbal agreements during the relationship. In Olivia's case, the lease Kyo signing alone meant she was still financially responsible, even after Nathan walked away. But that wasn't all. She had put deposits down on furniture, utilities, and even groceries in bulk, expecting they'd split everything. Now, she was drowning in expenses he had promised to cover. Those texts saying "I'll pay you back next month" were now a trail of financial breadcrumbs, and in court, breadcrumbs are sometimes enough to lead to a judgment. Nathan, now realizing the weight of his words, began scrambling for a defense. His attorney claimed the texts were casual. They were in a relationship, the defense argued, and romantic language is not a binding contract. But the judge didn't dismiss the case outright. Instead, the court asked to see more: bank records, payment receipts, lease agreements, and phone records. And slowly a picture formed, one of trust extended, promises made, money spent. And then, silence. The kind of silence that's loud in court. It began as heartbreak, but what Olivia soon discovered was something deeper. The legal system wasn't just recognizing financial damage. In a growing number of cases across the US, courts were starting to hear arguments for something far more personal and volatile: emotional fraud. Her lawyer Marla had seen this shift brewing for years. Ghosting had become more than just a dating annoyance. It was creating ripple effects that cost people jobs, mental stability, and even their reputations. And while emotional pain alone doesn't usually lead to a successful lawsuit, when combined with deception, manipulation, or measurable damages, things start to change. Courts are cautious but not deaf, and Olivia's case was about to test how far the legal world was willing to go. The idea of emotional fraud is built on a simple principle: if someone deliberately lies or manipulates another person for personal gain, and that person suffers real damage because of it, the deception may cross into fraud. In relationships, proving this is tricky, but not impossible. Olivia's team dug deeper. They found proof that Nathan had been planning to leave for weeks, yet encouraged her to leave her job, sign a lease, and pay wedding deposits. There were even texts where he told friends privately he wasn't serious, but wanted to see how long she'd take care of him. Those messages, recovered through subpoenas of social media platforms, painted a picture that was no longer romantic. It was calculated. This is where the law becomes both delicate and daring. In jurisdictions like California and New York, emotional distress claims tied to fraud or breach of duty have occasionally succeeded when the plaintiff can prove intentional deceit. Olivia's team argued that Nathan intentionally misled her into financial decisions by feigning commitment. The breakup itself wasn't the crime. The manipulation that led up to it was. This strategy is rare, but it's gaining traction. In 2019, a Texas woman successfully sued her ex-fiancé for emotional fraud after he continued an affair for months while planning their wedding, costing her over $35,000 in non-refundable costs. To strengthen the claim, Marla brought in a psychologist who testified to Olivia's emotional trauma. She developed anxiety, lost sleep, and had to seek counseling, which added to her financial burden. This wasn't just sadness, it was measurable, diagnosable harm. That distinction was key, because legally emotional distress alone is not usually enough to win damages. But when paired with a demonstrable pattern of deception and financial loss, the courts begin to listen. The defense fought back hard. Nathan's legal team argued that emotional fraud was a slippery slope, that no breakup would ever be safe from legal retaliation if feelings alone became grounds for lawsuits. But Marla countered with a simple question to the judge. What happens when a breakup isn't just painful, but predatory? The judge didn't rule right away. But in the courtroom, a tone had shifted. There was a real sense that a new legal door was creaking open. As the testimony unfolded, it became clear that the question wasn't just about Nathan and Olivia anymore. It was about how society defines harm in the age of digital intimacy. When people pour their hearts into texts, and those texts are used to manipulate, mislead, or defraud, should the law step in? That question lingered in the air long after court recessed for the day. By now the case had drawn media attention. Legal blogs picked up the story. Hashtags like #TextBreakupLawsuit and #digitalfraud trended online. Olivia became a kind of reluctant figurehead for people who felt wronged not just emotionally but economically by relationships gone wrong. Others pushed back, fearing the weaponization of breakups. But Olivia wasn't fighting for revenge. She was fighting for accountability.